Pickaxe.
Hello, and welcome back to the Review of Death, your fortnightly home for Doctor Who news and reviews. I'm Matthew Toffolo. I'm joined as ever by Billy Garratt-John. Hello, Billy.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Howdy. I'm good, thank you very much. Welcome to another miserable chat. Well, considering the conversation we've just had.
They're actually spitting water out.
Welcome back, everyone. We should say from the top of the show, Matt, is no news good news? We've just come out of D23
Yes.
and no announcement regarding the immediate future of Doctor Who.
No, but I mean, again, much like with the Sea Devils, I have to eat my hat because Doctor Who was present at D23. They had a TARDIS there, they had Ncuti Gatwa's costume there, they had Millie Gibson's costume there, and they even featured all of 2 seconds of David Tennant and Catherine Tate and Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson in their big Disney sizzle reel, which made a lot of people happy. I'm not particularly fussed, to be honest. But,
There's an editor sat there going, I got the footage, I might as well put it in. We're not paying for this. We've got it on our system anyway.
Yeah. That'll fill in that gap.
There, yeah, exactly.
There's a couple
I need
of beats
2 seconds
a
here.
few bars of music here that needs something gurning. Put some gurning in. Gurning Brits. I don't know why he's English.
We've hit another
Gurning
one
Brits.
of those milestones. Gurning Brits. Yeah, that's what they're good at. We've hit another one of those milestones where, you know, I don't know, are alarm bells ringing or are we too apathetic to really care at this point that no news has come out about a renewal from Disney's side?
Apathetic or pathetic? Or both. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, people were saying like, oh, you know, maybe they're going to announce something at D23. Look, if they were going to announce anything at D23, the BBC website would have been like, oh, there's a thing. There'd have been a panel. There would have been a panel. They're not just going to, in between the Star Wars and the Marvel, just some guy comes out and say, oh, by the way, we're doing season 3 of Doctor Who. Thanks. And then walks off. You know,
And
Russell
a pin
would have
drops
been
in
there.
the audience.
Yeah, one pin in it. What? Yeah, so I don't know. The jury is still well and truly out on that stuff. I think what's going to be interesting to see is whether this the war between the land and the sea, is that Disney related, or is this just totally Bad Wolf BBC? Has that been mentioned?
I don't know. Was there not Disney branded television mentioned in the release announcement thing on the Doctor Who website? I can't remember now. People will tell us in the comments either way.
Someone who actually read the press release, tell us.
Somebody who can be bothered to log into the Doctor Who website right now, let us know what the situation is.
Someone who gives a shit.
I was thinking last night, you know, above the kind of headline of when, if, will it get announced that there's a renewal, is how many more seasons they'll announce. Because I can't imagine that they'll just do 1 year. You know, they'll want to get content out of it. And if they decide to do the same model, shooting the series back to back, if they announce a further 2 seasons, it's interesting that they didn't do the 2 seasons with an option. I guess it shows hesitancy on Disney's side from the off, you know, from the initial announcement. But, you know, to have the series received so lukewarmly by the fans and also obviously not certain demographics not showing up. They're probably maybe at a stage of we cut our losses or we, you know, 2 seasons is a big commitment for them.
It is a big commitment. And I think the thing is, you need to remember is that obviously, you know, it's not like Doctor Who is a successful brand at the moment. You know, it's not like, imagine if Disney was doing this when Doctor Who was as big as it was in 2005 or 6 or 7, you know, then you could imagine they say, well, look, we'll do 2 seasons and then, you know, like you said, an option for a third probably straight off the back. It's very untested waters both for Disney and for the BBC, really. I guess they're not really used to partnering with somebody else in this respect. So, I don't know. Who knows? If it happens, it happens. Season 25 is coming out on Blu-ray. That's nice.
That'll be good. That'll actually be good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. And I think that's it in terms of news, unless anything's announced between now and Thursday when this comes out. But I doubt that. Yeah. New DWM cover just dropped with Double Shooty on the cover, fulfilling the dreams of a large portion of the audience, I'm sure. And I don't know.
There was a Ruby Sunday waxwork, but that mysteriously went missing, didn't it, Billy?
It did, yeah. It's melting in the upstairs bathroom at the moment. I may or may not be an article by me in there because so we'll see. I mean, either it will be in there or it's suspiciously absent again, and I just have to accept there is a fatwa out on us from the Doctor Who production team, and they don't want us anywhere near it. But we'll see. We'll see if it's not in this one. Then
as long as you got paid, who cares?
I've got my 12 pence a word. I don't really care now, but it would be nice to be in there. Right.
We'll pay you not to be in this magazine.
That's what it feels like at the moment. Deep breath. We're wrapping up our sort of 10-year deep exhalation. We're wrapping up our 10th anniversary festivities on the rod. We started off with a review of Death of the Daleks.
Wait.
Last week, we did a little retrospective on the Patreon about how two became one. And this week, we are reviewing the episode of Doctor Who released closest to the formation of the Review of Death. 10 years ago, either this week, last week, or next week, it was Deep Breath. Peter Capaldi's debut as one Doctorus Whous.
What was the number one?
Oh, fuck. Probably, I don't know, David Gesua or whatever, or...
Who?
Do you want me to I don't know. He sounds like a man who makes the pop und the rock music. Let me have a look and see what was going on there. What does it matter? I'll say it and you'll go who regardless.
Yeah, I mean...
Unless it's your next door neighbour, you won't know who they are.
That is true. Or unless it was like someone from the 70s.
UK number... Yeah, Cliff Richard's back in the charts.
Yeah.
UK number one's 2014.
Yeah.
I was going to say before we started that this was one of the last episodes of Doctor Who that I watched before moving to university. I think the first episode that went out when I was studying or when I was in my halls was Listen, I think. And I remember watching this with a bunch of schoolmates and they were very excited because they were all big Thick of It fans.
Right.
And were like, oh, I will actually give Doctor Who a go now. I haven't watched it for about 5 or 6 years because, you know, I've got into sex, drugs and rock and roll. But Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who, like, that's cool. I'll watch this. And I kind of remember the reaction being, you know, generally, oh, okay, that was all right. Which is better than most other times I've watched Doctor Who with my friends when they've been throwing things at the TV. What do you remember
throwing
from around...
you at the telly? Why'd you make us watch this for, Billy? God's sake. You always do this.
Let's have a look. So what is this? I don't know either of these acts. It was Rude by Magic or Am I Wrong by Nico and Vins with a Z. So you know it's edgy as fuck.
Who?
Fuck knows. Matt, what do you remember of this coming out? Because, of course, prior to the premiere, it leaked.
Yes. I remember the days when you could watch this in black and white.
With a big fucking watermark over the top of it.
With a big watermark on the top. Yeah, and the scripts leaked, didn't they? Didn't some of the scripts leak? Yeah, I think they did, if I remember rightly. I got a funny feeling that it might have been someone from... Oh, no, was that with the Disney stuff? The leaker was from Brazil.
I think... Yeah, when I read the Wikipedia article, they said it was something in South America, and then also they'd migrated a bunch of systems, or BBC Studios had opened an office in Miami, and it may have come from there. But yeah, I think there was something... There was a South American tint to the leak, yeah. Do you remember watching it? Did we not watch it together?
I never watched the whole thing. I only saw a bit of it, and I was like, oh, this is naughty. I shouldn't watch this. But I just wanted to I got a little glimpse. The bits that I remember seeing were a little bit at the beginning, but mainly to see what the new title sequence was like, but it was the Matt Smith one, so that was disappointing. Yeah. And then the bit in the restaurant later on, the chunky scene with him and Clara. And I remember watching it and thinking...
fucking chunky scenes in this, I tell you what.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this story. Scenes go on. It's not the sort of pacey Doctor Who that we're used to of this sort of period. For better or for worse, I don't know. We'll come to that. I mean, my first point that I've made in my notes is this story is needlessly long.
Mm-hmm.
And I resisted the urge to see what people on Twitter said about this story, because I saw that your tweet that you put out about this episode got quite a bit of traction, didn't it? Got quite a few retweets and stuff. So I'm interested to see what people said, because I sort of skirted them and I thought, oh no, I mustn't look. I'll wait until we do this recording. So I'm interested to see if people...
Yeah, nothing generates a response quite like, what do you think of this Capaldi era of Doctor Who? Yeah. Like, it will bring out all forms of emotion and feeling about it. And, we typically wear our hearts on our sleeve when we talk about Doctor Who that we don't like.
Yeah.
And obviously going into this at a point, this is the year prior to me being the closest I've been to just thinking, fuck this, I'm not tuning in next week. But then I remember really liking Series 8. And I remember, like in the immediate aftermath of it being broadcast, or like during the run. And I remember it was the last like new series Blu-ray that I hawked out for.
Right, yeah.
So I have this on Blu-ray. I don't ever remember putting the disc in the player, but I have it on the shelf somewhere.
Yeah.
But I do remember coming out of Deep Breath and going, well, this seems like a kind of flavour that I'm into. Things seem to be taken a bit more seriously. Yeah. And there's a kind of more cerebral element to this. And I'm really liking the look of Peter from the screen time that we've received of him.
Yeah.
But watching it back, I agree with you. The thing that stands out the most to me, besides wanting to see Strax boiled alive in his own piss,
yes, there's a bit later on, isn't it, when he points the gun at his head, and I put in my notes. Let me see where I've got this. I don't understand why Strax's gun doesn't work on the androids, but my God, that shot of Strax about to blow his brains out don't promise me with a good time.
Do it. I think watching it, besides Strax being Strax, my main takeaway was, fucking hell, this doesn't need to be 75 minutes long.
No. I mean, I think the whole I don't like the Paternoster gang generally, to be honest. Quelle surprise. But in this story, I just feel like, why are you here? Why are you here? I just don't really... I just get fed up with all of them. Actually, I tell a lie. Jenny's fine. She's fine. She does nothing to annoy me. Strax is just annoying by his very nature. Madame Vastra, she's on a high horse, and did you know, Billy, she's a lesbian? Did you get that? Did you get that? Yeah, it's quite subtle in the text, but if you look closely, there are slight, very tiny hints, minuscule hints, really, that she might indeed be a lesbian. But
I can't believe it.
Yeah, So they immediately it's sort of a bit like, do we have to?
I will say I did find them less grating, particularly Vastra and Jenny, because as a whole, they're mired for me by the inclusion of Strax. But then when you view Strax as just he's there to get the 5-year-olds to chuckle, and he's so far removed from being a Sontaran, and I'm not that like prissy about it anymore. Like, he's sullying the good work of Lynx and Styr and Stike and all that have come before him. That I'm really not fussed by his concepts or by him being there as a principal. It's just when he is on camera, I do want to see him commit some sort of seppuku or something, the Sontaran version of that. And that's nothing against
Dan Starkey,
who is, Sontaran extraordinaire. It's purely a Strax related thing.
Yeah,
but
it's just the character, isn't it?
It is the character. But how this lot, I'll tell you why I think they're there. I think they're there because they were eager for another spin-off. And it didn't land for whatever reason. But I would have absolutely taken this lot over those class holes getting a series.
Yeah.
Like, how this lot didn't get commissioned and that did, I'll never understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this story, it's a bit funny, isn't it, this episode? Tonally, it feels like it's trying very hard to be something different than what has gone before. And yet at the same time, it's sort of like, we don't want to veer away too much in terms of like some of the humorous elements. But then because of that, I feel like in the editing and the directing, some of those humorous aspects they don't land in the way that they normally would. And it feels like the editing is at odds with what's been shot or what's in the script. So, for instance, like that whole opening sequence when Peter comes out of the TARDIS and he's doing the whole, you used to be a little tin head and, and all this sort of stuff. And, you're grumpy and, of the 7 dwarves and all that sort of stuff. All this stuff that you would imagine that stuff to be played with Murray Gold doing his like tinkly tonkly, little saxophone, trill or whatever, just to give it that sort of clownish music. But instead it's got sort of like a kind of ominous and sort of sinister, somber tone. Yeah. And you watch it and I always think, this just seems very weird. This feels very at odds. And then there's a bit later on where it does the same thing. At the end, actually, is the bit with the scene with Missy, when she does her like little pirouettes around the fountain. And it feels like there should be sort of quite big music behind that to lead into the closing music, but it doesn't. And the scene sort of feels quite empty because of it. It feels like very hollow, and you're just sort of like, oh no, fill that space, because it just feels like a void. So I don't know what the thought process was there. Whether that was from Ben Wheatley, who I think does a rather nice job directing it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Or whether it was from Stephen. Maybe Stephen thought, no, we've got to be different, so let's try and make it feel more serious. But it's very weird. And then, of course, you get the moments like, obviously everything with the Paternoster gang is generally there for comic relief anyhow. But particularly the moment that I'm sure everyone cringes at is when he does the psychic mind meld shit with Vastra.
And you get the horny bonk sound effect.
Yeah, and you're like, what am I watching? Hanna-Barbera? What is going on here? It's weird.
That's exactly what I wrote in my notes. What is this Hanna-Barbera bullshit? It's very odd. Like you say, there are elements of this that do come across as quite sinister or a little bit glib in tone.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a decision that has been made in like the tone meeting for the series, because Peter Capaldi's Doctor is glib and is, down bad, as the kids would say, through this whole series. And that is kind of the thrust of his character. And can he find the happy-go-lucky Murray Gold Doctor within there?
Yeah.
Which he doesn't really do.
No.
And, Ben Wheatley is a fucking sinister director. I mean, this is the guy who directed A Field in England, which has a few of the most sinister and unpleasant, unsettling moments in cinema. Yeah. And by all accounts, seems a lovely bloke and relished the opportunity to do a Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And when you've got, on paper, Stephen Moffat script, Peter Capaldi as Doctor Who, fuck me, I'm being blessed here as a directorial debut for the show. Obviously, he didn't come back after this first block of Deep Breath and Into the Dalek was over, which I think is a shame. But it does have the recipe for a great start for this run. But like you say, because it isn't just for learned, cerebral Doctor Who fans who want a little bit of edge or want a little bit of cynicism or whatever from their Doctor Who, they have to put in the moments of comedy, and they do feel forced. And particularly, obviously, the horny bonk sound effects, but there's the scene with Strax and Clara when he gives her a medical.
Yeah.
I can hear, drop your trousers, love. I can hear some stirrups. I can hear Stephen Moffat at a BFI preview event or something.
Yeah.
Saying there was a hilarious scene where Strax gives Clara a medical, but we had to cut it for time, and I'm really disappointed it had to go. Because I'm watching this and I'm thinking it's bookended either side with a deleted scene caption, like the Red Dwarf deleted scenes, where they give a bit of context as to where this was supposed to go or whatever. Yeah. Because the whole thing comes to a screeching halt in those moments.
Yeah.
Even the scene, as good as it is, where Peter Capaldi talks to Elizabeth Sladen's widow.
Yeah.
Because Brian Miller appears as the tramp in this.
Yeah.
And
he's very good.
Goes on. He's very good.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that in all my puffs. You certainly is a fucking jock. There's, definitely a few moments in this where you think that would have been cut if we were doing a regulation 45.
Yeah, it's weird. Was this released in cinemas?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It got screened definitely in the UK, and also there were international screenings the day after it debuted on BBC One.
Right.
And also, I'm sure I read somewhere there were special scenes that at the start of Strax running down past incarnations of the Doctor.
Oh yeah.
And there was also a Q&A with Moff, Cap, and Coleman, which was streamed after the episode aired.
Okay.
Yes. And I mean, it does have a filmic quality. I mean, that's why you hire Ben Wheatley, I suppose. And obviously the running time is feature length, quote unquote. And it's nice to have it. It's nice. It's a cool way to start the season off. But you do feel like maybe 60 would have been better. Maybe 70 minutes would have been better. There isn't quite enough here to justify the running length. And
this is precisely what I was going to say next. Just go back to what you were saying about the medical scene sequence. That was that all because of that Blue Peter competition? Can you remember?
Yes.
So she's got the hairpin that she uses to lock the carriage door. Sorry, which made me roll my eyes. And then, of course, all that gubbins with the thing, this is the trouble with things like that, because it's you can almost feel poor Moffat thinking, oh, God, how am I going to write this in? Oh, okay, I'll just put some daft scene in it. And it does slow it down because, like you said, it just feels like it's just sort of plonked there. But in terms of the runtime, this story doesn't have enough to it to fill out the 76 minutes. And I know a lot of people have said about Series 8 that this felt very much like Stephen Moffat was running on fumes after everything that he'd done with the 50th and stuff. And I sort of kept that in mind watching it. And I sort of went, I can see what people mean by this. It was kind of like, well, what's the baddie? We'll bring back the Clockwork droids. They were good. And, it's kind of one of those monsters that you think, well, they were good, but kind of expected them to ever come back in any way, shape, or form. And I think he handles it in a cleverish way. I think it's fun that the Doctor's not in on the gag that he's met them before in a critically acclaimed episode. And I guess in a way that sort of strengthens the fact that this Doctor is a very different Doctor to the Doctor that was in that story. You know,
Yeah.
he isn't. He has lost his connection to the sentimentality of that episode, which is something that would have stuck with the 10th Doctor or even the 11th Doctor. Yeah, it just feels like things just don't really add up for me. I don't feel like, as nice as it looks, that T-Rex looks great. What is the point of the T-Rex? Other than to have like a wham-bam opening?
Well, I think that's it. I think I read that Stephen Moffat had the image of the T-Rex stomping around Victorian London, which is a great image and looks fantastic. And is a great hook for the start of the story. He had that before the rest of the story. And you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't begrudge that because obviously you need something to lead with in terms of pre-credits and the poster and something iconic and something that people can get their teeth into. Is that's a very Doctor Who visual, a T-Rex stomping around Victorian London. Then it self-immolates and bursts into flames.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of wondering, like, okay, the spontaneous combustion element of the plot doesn't really go anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere.
And you know, okay, but why would they spontaneously combust people, or why would people burst into flames if the Clockwork people need the body parts? Is it to cover their tracks afterwards?
It's to cover their tracks, but it feels like you almost need... I feel like this story needed to be more of an actual mystery. You know, it has the trappings of a Sherlock...
that's why the Paternoster gang are there.
It has the trappings of a Sherlock Holmes, you know, to the point where you've got Vastra saying, oh, you know, the game is afoot and all this sort of stuff. You know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we're doing Sherlock Holmes, you know, that other program that this guy writes. And it doesn't really go there. The mystery is there's a big dinosaur, it catches fire, oh, and there's an advert in the paper. You know, there's not really much...
I was going to say, that's the only sort of Sherlockian investigative moment is where they turn the paper over and see the advert for the restaurant.
Yeah, you know, there's not really much sleuthing going on here, which is a shame, really, because it feels like, you know, if you wanted to get into the new Doctor, you know, that would have been good to show him having to think about things and, you know, rather than just go, oh yeah, there's an ad in the paper, which in and of itself doesn't really make a lot of sense, because how the hell would she know that there was going to be an advert for some bloody restaurant on the back? It's weird. It's a wafer thin plot, this one.
And they're expected to make it feature length. Going back to the Blue Peter thing, Blue Peter ran a competition to design gadgets for the Paternoster gang, a sonic hat pin for Vastra, a sonic gauntlet for Jenny, which I don't really remember seeing.
She holds her hands out and scans the T-Rex.
Okay. And a sonic noose. Sorry, a sonic long net. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It's what those kind of opera glasses that people wore back in the day. It's what he scans.
Oh, it's what he scans
Clara with.
Okay, right.
One day that there should be a court case brought up about all these things that kids designed from Blue Peter. And it's like, where's my fucking royalties? I mean, I suppose that's in the contract that their parents sign, is you waive any rights to producing this, you know. Have a look at that contract though, because it might run out at some point. It can't be in perpetuity, surely. So yeah, like you say, there's a lot of imbalance in this. There's a lot of things that just don't seem to quite land, or that don't stretch the running time, or don't justify the 76 minutes anyway. Yeah. But the good thing about the fact that this is so long is we get lots of scenes with Peter Capaldi as the new Doctor.
Yeah, that is true.
He is undoubtedly the best thing about this story, with the exception, I think, of one scene in particular a little later on. And I can see, I don't know if this is me projecting, but I can see his glee at being Doctor Who and playing this part through his performance. I can see that he's just like, I'm a pig in shit, man. I can't fucking believe this. I am Doctor Who. Right from the start, when he pokes his head out of the TARDIS and he's like, right, I get to do my post-regeneration scene.
Yeah. I get to do the Tom Baker bit. You know, I get to be Tom Baker in Robot. You know, it's
great. But you know, that's a moment, I think, where the direction or the editing is sort of in competition with the rest of the story, because there's that slow motion bit where he points at the TARDIS and Clara comes out. Yeah. There's another slow motion bit a little bit later on as well, which seems a little bit at a place. But Peter Capaldi is absolutely fantastic in this, and it's a shame really that he does default to a 56-year-old teenager for the rest of the run. Yeah, because his sort of baffled, "You've got a dinosaur too," and all that sort of stuff, and running around is great. And it's a shame that he didn't get to play it more like that later on.
It's weird, isn't it? And I noticed the same thing watching it. It was like, he's fantastic all the way through, and then as soon as you get that scene when Clara goes into the TARDIS and he's sat there mopey, you know, and you sort of think, oh, he's got the gag about, the roundels, and it's said in such a morose way, and you sort of think, oh, no, that's at odds with how you were in the earlier scenes. You know, you seemed quite, like you said, quite joyous at being Doctor Who. And I wonder if at some point did they say, no, you got we want you to be the miserable bastard Doctor. We want you to be the Malcolm
message
Tucker.
Passed. Yeah, that seemed to be the message passed down from the top. Obviously, not just to Capaldi, but those writing the scripts as well, who were being sent the scripts back and being told, make him more unpleasant.
Yeah.
And that's obviously to the detriment of this Doctor, because he is amazing in those moments where he's got a little bit more pep to him. Yeah. And obviously, there's a hard turn in Series 9 to make him more amiable, which is such a diversion that you can see the gears turning in the opposite direction on screen. Yeah. You can see them going, shit, we fucked up here. And then you get to Series 10, and then things level out, and you're like, this is what we could have had from the start. But there's so many great moments. There's and you know, it's not just Peter Capaldi who's responsible for these moments working. It's Stephen Moffat's script, because you know, for all of the, you know, I can't say that. For all of the, you know, the Vastra and Jenny stuff, and
she's a lesbian. Did you know that?
Get out of here.
Yeah, for all I believe she performs cunnilingus on the human woman.
It is repeatedly, you know, we're repeatedly informed of that throughout the story. I think, there's I can't think of anything else now. There are moments where the dialogue really sparkles and Peter's really relishing it. All the stuff, you know, even the opening sequence with Thingy, the asking questions one, the not me one. You have a whole room for not being awake in. Don't look at the mirror, it's absolutely furious.
There's some great stuff.
Is really good. So good. But when you do get to the end, you're like, he's like this for a whole year, and it's not.
It's like, where did the energy go?
Where did it go? Where did it go, man? And it's like, you know, there's such a drop in. I can see why people were like, why would you make such a massive change to the casting, which, you know, is to the benefit of old, grumpy, classic arsehole Doctor Who fans like us? Yeah. And obviously they're not considering the younger generation who are watching it, back when Doctor Who had that audience. But then double down on it and continue to make him unpleasant. And I know the whole season arc is, am I a good man? The answer to that is not right now, but typically you are. And it just doesn't really work, which is weird, because, you know, this is the kind of Doctor we've been asking for a long time. And we want now is like a kind of morally ambiguous sort of, maybe not morally ambiguous, but at the very least a Doctor that struggles, that has some sort of inner conflict. And we have it here, but when that is his entire character, and you don't have those moments of levity, it just, you can see why people were just not keen, you know? Yeah.
And it's a shame, like you said, it's a terrible shame, because it's weird that in this episode, it feels like all of that stuff, as soon as, all the stuff even with the tramp, you know, he does the humor so well. You know, and the humor that has been written in the script is really good. And he plays it well with Brian Miller. He plays it off well with Jenna Coleman. But then, but it just seems to fizzle out later on, which is weird. It's a shame that they just didn't let him just do it. Just do it as you want to do it, and we'll go from there. Because, like you said, Series 9, it is really in the opposite direction, but in high gear, and it's like, well, this doesn't feel like the same person almost. It's bizarre. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I love him. I think he's superb. God bless Peter Capaldi. He's so good.
God bless him.
I hope
he. Go on.
I gotta say, Jenna Coleman, I think she does a good job in this as well.
Yes. Now, I wanted to talk about Clara because Jenna Coleman is superb.
Yeah.
She is absolutely fantastic. That scene is obviously down to Ben Wheatley too, but the scene where she has to hold her breath and get out of the half-faced man's lair is so good. And the confrontation she has with the half-faced man prior to that, where she's sort of calling his bluff, is also fantastic. But fuck me, I hate Clara Oswald. I think she is Scrappy Doo. She is.
I don't mind her in this one. I think in this one she's fine. Although I hate all that stuff at the beginning. That stuff at the beginning's a bit annoying.
What stuff at the beginning?
Well, that whole bloody, she's. I mean, like, I understand what they're trying to do with her not vibing with the fact that the Doctor has changed into an old man.
Grey pubes.
Yeah, but that whole thing about putting the veil on is so on the nose. I think it's like someone slapped her around there with a sledgehammer to try and put this message across. I think there might have been a better way of doing it.
That's for the kids, though, isn't it? That's for the kids, kind of going, "Oh, I don't like it because he's old now."
Yeah,
he's not like my kooky younger brother.
Yeah,
that's there for the audience to reassure them. So I kind of get why they were so heavy-handed with it, but I know what you mean. Yeah,
it just sort of feels a bit like a bit dumb. It's sort of dumbed down. It sort of talks down. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But I think she's fine, honestly, Clara. And I think she works really well with Peter Capaldi. I think they have a very good relationship. I think all of the stuff... In my notes, as I've put, as soon as it gets to the scene in the restaurant with the two of them, it's like, here we go. Now the story started. And, this is what I'm here to see. I don't want to see...
And their dynamic between each other, it like starts from the off. Like they get off to a really good start together.
Yeah. I don't want to see this backdoor pilot to the misadventures of the Paternoster gang. Chuck it in the bin. Don't give a shit. And they're forgotten. They literally get forgotten for a good 20 odd minutes before they're like, oh yeah, they fall out of the sky. And they're useless. So yeah, again, this is what I mean about the runtime. It just feels like so much padding. I'd love to do a re-edit of this and see how if you could even get it down to a good 45 minutes. And I think you probably could. I think you could. Yeah. I mean, I think I actually wrote down here exactly. Yeah, here we go. As soon as the Doctor and Clara get together, 37 minutes in. That's when the story starts to kick off. So
that was the point at which I looked at my runtime as well.
Yeah.
And went, fucking hell, we're only halfway through. When they drop through the floor of the restaurant and you're like, whoa, we've got quite a bit more to go here.
Yeah. But it's weird because the story is still at a bit of a standstill. It's just, we get to the spaceship.
We still don't know what, why, where, who.
We don't know what, why, where, who, and then it's like, right, we're going to just stay on this spaceship for the rest of the story, and then the story ends. It's really weird. It doesn't feel like any other sort of Doctor Who story around that time. And again, is it that thing of like, is Stephen Moffat running on fumes? I don't know. It's a weird one.
I don't know, but obviously their chemistry is great. Clara and the 12th Doctor and Jenna and Peter, they obviously work well together and they bounce off of each other well. I find it hard to believe that she's struggling to acknowledge that the Doctor is older when only a year prior, in terms of the run of it, she was jumping around in the Doctor's time stream and saw, the third Doctor from the 5 Doctors, who looks more like your nan or anyone's nan than he looks like John Pertwee. But then Capaldi appears, who is a young man in an old man's body. He's got that sort of Peter Pan, David Bowie kind of thing going on. And she can't quite get over it. And I know that they're trying to play it as it's her insecurities, it's her judgment of him.
Yeah.
But I don't know. When Clara is by principle not by her own admission, most screwed on person, all the kind of needy game player stuff when they have that conversation, and I love that the delivery of Capaldi. Well, you just said that. I love all that. All that stuff is really good.
It's all great, and that bit. Something else I'll bring up in a minute. That bit when he pulls the hair off her head, and he says, "Oh, it was the only one out of place. I'm sure you'd have wanted it killed." I love that line. There's some really great lines, and it's those lines that I'm just like, yeah. That's Doctor Who, that's what I've been missing, that
Definitely.
Slightly sarcastic, dry sense of humour that you could almost imagine, Tom delivering, or, Colin in particular. I think Colin would have relished that sort of stuff back in the 80s.
Definitely. Hair? Because he would have plucked it and gone, sorry, babe, so sorry.
Sorry, babes. Here's some hair routine tips that I found on Instagram for you.
Love it. But she from the off has got the Doctor by the nuts, and I don't
literally. She smacks him with the screwdriver
with the sonic in the balls, which is a very poorly rendered comedic moment, and his line of the symbolism. It's like, all right, yes, Stephen, the meta, the sonic, the penis, we get it. Like we literally did this last year in Day of the Doctor. Yeah. Like, okay.
It's a dick, we get it.
Yeah, and what the symbolism, there's no need to say symbolism when you cut to a shot of the sonic in his lap as an extension of his lad. Like, we see it. Like, it's right there. But it's typical. I mean, there are much bigger examples of this, and I won't stay on it much longer, but I did want to kind of get it off my chest of the whole, the Doctor has this weight of intellect and age and is the title character of the show, and yet is, and it's obviously a kink thing, is, really talked down to and treated, like an idiot, and like, spoken down to by Clara for the whole of this run, and I just I don't like it. And it's not a sort of, it's not a precious, the Doctor is infallible and the Doctor should never be spoken to by one of his human companions like that. It is just a case of not her. Like, of all the people, it's all right if it's Romana, if it's somebody who's on an intellectual level, or of the set, but not Clara. She's just an insufferable git. Right. Let's talk about something that you would want to pull your ears off over. The theme tune. I was hoping we'd get a rendition. Thank you.
That's pretty good.
Now, I am not a, musically minded individual in that I can identify something from a technical perspective that sounds shit. But I do know what I like. And I don't like these fucking space bagpipes. And it's very
good. I like that. Space bagpipes.
Space bagpipes, it is.
Yeah.
Is it supposed to be the Doctor is unsufferably grating and unpleasant, so let's make the theme tune the same? Is that what it's about?
Dear.
It's so busy. I like the... we can't talk about the theme tune without talking about the titles as well, so we'll kind of, I guess, dovetail them. But I love the start of it with the clangs of the bells.
Yeah.
It does feel like this Doctor is older, and therefore, we're going to have a look at some clockwork stuff because that's old. I kind of get the thrust of it, and also the kind of the thick smog of Victorian London going into that opening thing with the cogs is a nice sort of mix, and it looks cool. But right from the first couple of seconds, you've got these laser bolts fizzing across the soundtrack, and you've got the kind of tremolo, fluttery going off in the background and stuff. And that's before you even get to the honking space gooses, or geese, I should say. But it's just unpleasant. It's an unpleasant listen, Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Bizarrely, Annie likes this one.
Nah.
So, yeah, it didn't do it for me either. Although, I've got to say, the bit that I do like isn't even in any of the episodes, which is the middle eight. The middle eight is really good. It's because it's a different variation of it, and I think it works rather well. Shame they just didn't bother to stick it on any of the episodes. But yeah, weird music. I don't really like the title sequence either at all.
No.
I think at the time I was like, oh, this is different. And then as I got older, I was like, yeah, it feels too on the nose. It just feels too on the nose. The clocks.
Obviously, it's a Billy Henshaw joint. Stephen Moffat saw the concept on YouTube and went, do you want to do it for real? We'll give you a budget and you can tart it up a little bit. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't produced by like a frame store or a mill. It was done in-house at BBC Wales.
Yeah.
Much like the Series 7B title sequence, which is, a
crime against humanity.
And yeah, like...
Oh no, I like the 7B one. It's the ones before, the Windows Movie Maker.
Oh, yeah, that's just weird. But I like the 7B one in concept. I like the different elements, but, from a technical standpoint, it is horrible to look at. It's not well executed.
No,
because it's so flat. And when you look at what happened in 2005 and then in 2010, where there's a kinetic energy to it and there's an adrenaline element to it as well, where you're like, right, settle in, we're off on an adventure. This is so flat. It's so two-dimensional, and it's like, oh yeah, this is done in house. It's not. They've not asked a big CGI house to do this for them.
Yeah. And
again, conceptually it's kind of interesting, but in terms of the execution, it's very two-dimensional. It's very flat. There's no sense of travel. There's no sense of, hyping you up for what's about to come. It's like a Bond pre-credit sequence where it's supposed to set the tone and it's supposed to, get you settled and here we go. It's time for Doctor Who. This is like, tune in if you fancy. I'm not gonna force you through it.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of that, with the music, there are some really great bits of soundtracking in this story in particular.
Oh yeah, for sure. When the things, as soon as it started this episode, and I heard the music in that opening pre-titles bit, my mind went back to playing the Lego Dimensions game and playing the Doctor Who maps, and I was like, this was quite a good period for Doctor Who in terms of that like ancillary stuff. I mean, holy shit, Doctor Who was in a big Lego video game with Batman. Yes. It is like all my Christmases came at once. I could have Batman and Doctor Who meeting in a computer game. Brilliant.
Isn't it like one of the most expensive games to like get on the secondhand market now? All those like individual pieces and
really,
I think it's quite difficult to get if you want to play the Doctor Who levels and stuff. It's pretty hard to make all that work, because obviously you needed the little minifigs.
You needed the minifigs,
and all that.
Yeah. It was a faff about. It was a real fucking faff about having to play it. But it was good fun, and I mean, obviously the people that made it, I think it was a British game developer, Traveller's Tales, and they love Doctor Who, and so there's loads of little Easter eggs, and the fact that you could play as all the Doctors, and you went in the TARDIS as the Doctor, and their console room appeared. Brilliant. I mean, sure. Why didn't we get a Doctor Who Lego game? Not enough interest.
Yeah.
That's the trouble.
Yeah.
Not enough interest. And things haven't changed. So stop.
No.
Yeah. So stop pretending. Stop lying to yourselves.
Is that to the fans or to BBC Wales, BBC Studios?
Both of them. Or two of them.
There's a great bit of instrumentation, great bit of music when they're in the restaurant and they sort of realize they're not humans, and the Doctor's theme is great, and
I love Peter's theme. It's very, very good.
So cool, and loads of cool electronic elements. Again, and sort of like, I don't know what the right word is, but sort of discordant notes and stuff, and that add to the sort of sense of, or something uneasy is going on, and really, really, really good. So thumbs up, Murray. Good stuff. Yeah, this whole score is fantastic, and again feels like there's been an edict passed down to make it more alien, make it more electronic, make it odd. It's just a shame that the theme tune is just horrendous.
It does feel a bit like, what's this, like the fourth version of the theme Murray has done at this point?
Yeah.
And he's probably gone, oh God, I'll have to do this fucking shit again. What have I got in the old folders, like prototype ones that I chucked in the bin because they were, bit of this, bit of that, that'll do. I'll strangle my cat's dying. I'll just squeeze the life out of it and get some notes.
Maybe he's actively trying to turn people away. It's like, do not venture any further than... very strange. Right. Let's talk about one of the big talking points that came out of this story, and something we've actually turned over to our Rodders to get their feedback on. Was he pushed or did he fall? That was a whole thing. So to set it up, the Doctor starts having this conversation with the half-face man, who we haven't really spoken about. The half-face man is the main villain of the story.
Yeah. He looks
which
cool.
I really like. Looks cool. I like the fact he's got a slight kind of Eastern European twang to his voice. He's not like speaking like an English gentleman. He's got something else going on, which is nice, and he's great. I really, really love the whole idea of, rather than a robot, rather than a man making himself into a machine, he's a machine making himself into a man. Yeah. And you almost wish that some more of the running time had been given over to him trying to, like, I don't know, slip into high society or something. Like, he goes to because, like, where does he get the concept of faith from? Did he walk into a church and scare the shit out of the congregation? Or, like, if there was a scene where he's, like, in a confessional booth or something saying, I've been hacking people to bits, and, there was more of a Ripper element to it. Like,
I think this is exactly what this story needs. Is it needs more of that, like bollocks to the big dinosaur and bollocks to the bloody Paternoster gang. We want to see what, you want that mystery. You want, all right, okay, he plucks out some bloke's eyes with a pair of tweezers, whoopee shit, but you want a bit more of that, don't you? You want there to be like, oh, Doctor, there's been another murder. You want it to be a bit like Talons of Wang Chiang, but less racist. I think it needs some more of that. It needs some more of that proper mystery going on to really sell, to give more of a reason to the setting. And I don't know, it just feels at odds with itself. It's almost like Stephen had this idea of like, oh, we could do a Sherlock Holmes. Oh, but I'm fucking sick of doing Sherlock Holmes because I make a Sherlock Holmes series. Oh, shit. Oh, well.
I think he probably was self-aware enough to kind of go, people are going to see this as a very clear, allusion to the other program that I make. But the half-face man is a clockwork droid trying to turn himself into a man, and through some conversation that he has with the Doctor, we figure out that he's trying to reach the promised land. He's basically become Crichton in Body Swap. No, not Body Swap. The Last Day. The whole idea of like Silicon Heaven, and that's where all the copywriters go and all that sort of stuff, and printing presses on clouds with little harps and all that sort of stuff. But I don't quite get how did he develop this understanding of faith, or this understanding of that there's a place you go to after you're dead and all of that?
I think he's just picked it up over time from where he's taken bits and pieces of people. This information has just sort of like come with it. And so he's developed this thing. I think the thing that I don't really understand is how he then ends up in the nether sphere, because he is not technically alive. You know, he hasn't got like, you know, I don't know. It's weird.
He's a real boy.
He's a real boy.
That's a fucked up version of Pinocchio, that him hacking people to bits and gluing noses onto him. Yeah, I like the half-face man. He looks great. Stell was sort of glancing at the screen every now and again and was go, he's creepy, or she's sort of, is this Doctor Who? You know, there was a slight element of, this is kind of a bit more, it's got more of an edge to it, or got more of an atmosphere to it than Doctor Who typically does. And I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but going to the Doctor Who experience with a bunch of friends, hello Nancy, and she went up to the half-face man and tapped his boot with her foot, and his whole leg came off. Which I think we just very, very quickly just wandered over to the other side of the exhibition, and yeah.
And you said, "Don't worry, at least it's not a prop from Good Doctor Who."
Yeah. Don't sneeze on that Silurian; it's going to flake more latex on the floor. But yeah, that's all very, very good fun, and they have a very deep conversation. Now, obviously,
Nice Only Fools and Horses reference as well.
Is there?
Yeah, about the broom.
Ah,
nice little little reference to what's his name, to Trigger. Ooh, nearly knocked my light over. Yeah, Trigger and his broom.
So Trigger and his broom, and the ship of Theus. Is that what it's? Is that the concept he's talking about here? Where if you replace enough parts of the ship, is it still the same ship?
Oh yeah.
Can you call it the same ship? All that sort of shit.
I like how you went for like the actual, you know, educated version of that, and I went Only Fools and Horses.
Thanks, Wikipedia, making me seem learned. But yeah, so the Doctor and the half-face man. Well, the Doctor pours a brandy, which is seems very out of character.
Brandy. Sorry,
brandy. You should have a ginger pop or something.
Yeah.
And he says, "I'm afraid I might have to kill you," which again is like
it's like James Bond, isn't it?
It is. He's got his silence Walther under the table.
Yeah, and he's Scottish. There we are.
And he's Scottish. Yeah. I'm afraid I'm going to have to kill you, Mr. Half-Fish Man.
But first, I'm going to pull myself a brandy.
But first, I'm going to get pushed. So I think the trouble with the whole did he, excuse me, I bumped the thing. Did he fall or was he pushed? Is the wording of it insinuates that Capaldi smacked him about and shoved him out the door. Gave him a Glasgow kiss, kicked him in his clockwork nuts, and then punted him out of the restaurant, out of the skin balloon, which is fucking great. That's a cool visual.
That's another
But the wording of that suggests a physical element of get to fuck and pushing him out. Whereas what it is, I think, in terms of the push, is him saying, "Go on, KYS."
Yeah.
And because that's what the whole conversation is about, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can never be what your interpretation of this is. You are not human. You know, the whole Silicon Heaven thing is not real. You won't go there. There is no promised land.
Yeah.
Somewhere there's a half-faced woman and a half-faced boy watching Daddy falling out of a hot air balloon, bursting into tears, and the inference is that the Doctor was like, "Go on, top yourself, mate. There's no point."
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the Doctor did him a favour because he did get to the promised land. So, you know,
he did.
He actually sorted it out for him.
What he said is, do you want to meet the guy who made you? Do you want to? I'll show you what Evan looks like, mate. We ran a poll on the
Through the Clockwork Man
Twitter account. We ran a poll, and 26% of people say he fell, and I mean, he literally did fall, so you're not wrong. Yeah. And 74% of people say he was pushed. I think it's a cool thing to leave ambiguous, and obviously Capaldi's look down the barrel of the lens sort of lends itself to the theory that he went, "Yeah, bam, get diff up," but he didn't. He obviously didn't. Smack him one and shove him off. Great visual being impaled by the spire of Big Ben as well.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I remember at the time being like, "Ooh, this is a bit different." But yeah, like you said, it works, and I think it's kind of funny that stuff, like having that little bit at the end, that little epilogue with the Clockwork Man, knowing that at that point we knew that this character of Missy, whoever she will be, as we did not know at the time, but we knew she was going to be in the series later on. We knew she was going to be a part of the finale. You almost think that the Clockwork Man's going to come back. You think, oh, okay, so
yeah,
they're
I
off.
can't remember. I think I wrote in my notes, did he pop up at the end or?
I mean, he's probably a Cyberman, isn't he? I guess.
True. Yeah.
He's like, oh, fucking hell, I was trying to get away from being a robot. Oh, silly cow. As he nods his head to Lethbridge Stewart, but less said about that, the better. I mean, I've not really got... there's a few little things that we haven't mentioned. Clemso, the UK's most famous extra. You see him in this one, don't you? He's in it. He's in Bond as well, isn't he? He's in there. The scene with the door. The door is about to close, and then the Doctor gets the sonic screwdriver out to open the door for Clara, and then she's like, well, go on, pass me the sonic. And he's like, oh, you're too slow. Oh, yes. I might need it. What do you think about that? That doesn't work for me.
It doesn't work, no.
He could have opened that door about 12 times.
Yeah, I know. I guess... Well, that is very similar to the sort of heel turn stuff that Colin's doing in his first story, where he's like actively selling out or being an arsehole or whatever. And it is unnecessary, I think, because that is what somebody would point to as a kid and go, well, he's not very nice. He's just doomed Clara. It's weird considering the fact that you've just had the scene where, in theory, or at least the inference is, there he is. He's. Oh no, that comes a little later, doesn't it? Where he pulls the Matt Smith mask off. Yeah. Which I suppose is fine, but it's a bit too much of a dickhead move on his part. Yeah. For him to be redeemed by the big swashbuckling. Brah, brah, he's back. He's here to save the day. It doesn't redeem that moment, does it? No, not at all. I think, sure, have them get separated by all means. Have the door come down and crush the sonic screwdriver, and shit. I literally cannot get you out of there. But don't worry, I'll come and get you. You just want that. Oh, I'll come and save you moment, don't you? But then, of course, it does set up that great scene where Clara has to hold her breath and get out of there, which is so good and really, really well directed, and all the stuff from her like POV of her like vision kind of flaring, and I love that bit where she gets out and then she goes down the corridor and she's like, fuck. And you've got all of the Clockwork people flanking that long corridor, and it's not, she hasn't got out of there. Really, really good. Really, really well done. But that's probably the most out of character bit for the Doctor in this whole story, is that. Yeah, I think it would have been very easy to have all of that happen without making the Doctor a pointless arsehole. I'd love to go back and watch our original review of this to see what we sort of said, because I can imagine me at the time being like, yeah, go on, be edgy. But now I'm like, nah, you're just... In my notes, when the Doctor says, later on, I'm skipping ahead, for when he turns around and says, I'm the Doctor and I've lived for 2,000 years and not all of them were good, whatever he says. I was like, Jesus Christ, it feels like Zack Snyder, edgelord sort of writing, this character. And it's like, it's so of that period as well, because I guess Snyderverse shit was all about then. And it's just like, it's just edgy for the sake of being edgy, Make him a bit cantankerous by all means, but, that sort of stuff just doesn't work for me. The last bit to talk about really would be the final scene with the phone call from the 11th Doctor. Yeah. which I love that whole scene. I think it's played really beautifully. It comes across as, you know, the 12th Doctor's sort of last roll of the dice to keep Clara around. And I think Jenna plays it fantastically. Matt's really good. That whole final movement of the episode is needed, isn't it? Because it's like the only person that can convince her to stick around and help him out is himself. Yeah,
I sort of go one of two ways, because I want to like it, but then I'm also like, oh, do we need Matt Smith turning up and sort of saying to the audience, don't like this old geezer, you like this guy? Well, fuck you, because he's gone. If so, hard luck.
Yeah.
Switch over to Ant and Dec on ITV. You know, that's what it feels like, and I think like, oh, is that sort of like hammering in the sort of death knell by showing, you know, here's what you could have had, sort of thing, or here's what you used to have. But I do love the sentiment of it. I love the Doctor's, you know, you can't see me, just see me. I love all that, and I love when Clara goes up to her.
Yes.
She's like a kid, isn't she? And she looks at him, you know, and the hug.
It's a little bit like the kind of going around the TARDIS and not quite believing that it's bigger on the inside. It's like, is that still the same face? And then eventually when she sort of cracks a smile and realizes, yeah, it's the same guy. And it does feel like all of the moaning and all of the being insecure about it does pay off really nicely in that moment. Just that one look.
It's really, really good. It sort of reminds me of Time in the Rani, when Mel's sort of, you know, holding the pulse and then like takes his hat off and looks at his hair and like, oh, you're totally different, you know. So I do like it, but I do kind of feel like, oh, is there an alternative version where we don't see Matt Smith? I don't know. It's very difficult, but like you said, it's kind of needed because that is the theme of the episode, isn't it? Is can Clara get to grips with, you know, the man that she used to like completely being a different person? You know, and I sort of appreciate the sentiment as well that the 12th Doctor has in the TARDIS, where he says, "Oh, I'm not your boyfriend, and I never said it was your mistake." You know? Which is great, you know. It almost makes up for all the mystery in a tight skirt or whatever, you know, the 11th Doctor says. It just sort of feels like the Doctor has matured, you know. So I mean, there's bits of that I really do appreciate. And even going back to the start, when there's a really nice moment when the Doctor's translating the T-Rex in his sleep. And then the line becomes blurred because he says something about, why
won't he see me?
Yes. And then it's like, oh, it's the Doctor talking now, you know, it's not the T-Rex, it's the Doctor sort of, you know, he knows that Clara can't quite get to grips with things. Which I like. I think that works well. And I think had it have been with a companion who had not just, like you said, met a load of different versions of the Doctor, it would have been perfect. You know, that would be a really good way of leading into this. But the fact that she's met every single Doctor Who, it does feel a bit like, meh.
It's just a personal thing against this one because he's a fucking jock.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I get it. But if he had been outwardly unpleasant to her from the off, if he had been sort of grumpy, like right away, rather than just being baffled and needing help, it's almost odd that isn't when she's at her most understanding of the Doctor and wanting to help, and it's after that when he's actually being morose and you know, needlessly angsty, where she's actually like, oh, go on, I'll give him a hand. It's odd that kind of the way that comes across, maybe, but that's deep breath. I kind of, that last scene perfectly encapsulates the whole thing, really, doesn't it? Because in concept, really, really nice to have that final scene, but in terms of the optics of it or certain elements of it, it totally gel. But I appreciate it for what it's trying to do, even if it doesn't necessarily hit those marks and comes across like a bit of a hodgepodge.
Yeah, but I mean, I cannot take away from the fact that it's beautifully written, beautifully acted, beautifully scored. It's a really good scene. It is a really good scene. Maybe I'm just mellowing as I'm getting older. Hard to believe.
Yeah. Oh my God, you liked it. You liked it. What? How many clockwork knobs are we giving this out of 10?
Clockwork knobs. How many clockwork knobs? 6.
Yeah.
6 knobs.
Fair enough. I'll give
maybe
give
5 or 6 knobs.
I'll give it 6.5 nuts and bolts out of 10. I think. Let's have a look at what
maybe
the
5.
Rodders...
I mean, I enjoyed I enjoyed the latter half, but as a whole, it does drag. I think that's the problem.
Yes.
The pacing's a bit of an issue. But it's, I don't know, 5 or 6. It's hard. The question I asked Annie. Now, Annie watched this with me.
Yes.
Well, I say she watched it. She was on her phone the whole time because she just could not get into this. She was just like, I can't watch this story. And I said, but it's the opening episode, this or Space Babies. And she said Space Babies. So she's on a flight back to Brazil as we speak.
She's on thin ice.
No, that's season 10.
That is season 10. Shit, sorry, 2 years
Series
off.
10. Sorry, fake fan.
I can see why you take Space Babies to a degree, because I think that this is such a tonal shift, and it doesn't necessarily land it. At least Space Babies is just like waffle thin plot, but enough to kind of set the tone at least. But because it does sort of wildly shift around this year and and the next year afterwards, it doesn't quite do the job it needs to do in ssort of setting up its stall and going like, well, we're going to be consistently like this from now on, because it doesn't stay consistent.
No, because I did say to her, I said, well, why? Well, I said, why would you put that above this? And she said, because that's only 45 minutes.
She knows it. Love it.
Yeah.
Good on her.
So good for her.
Let's have a look and see what... Good for you, father. Let's see what the Rodders thought. Macra, hello, Jack, says, a great series opener, very good at setting the tone for the series, how dark 12 could be, and how different he was to Matt Smith, especially with the ending of whether or not the Doctor pushed him or not. Very Seventh Doctor. Amy, I think it's the best intro to a new Doctor after 11th hour in the modern era. I mean,
okay.
Stephen Moffat does have a good track record of doing opening stories well. I mean, it's not bad by any means.
No.
When you consider,
Twin Dilemma exists.
Twin Dilemma, New Earth, there's definitely...
Church on Ruby Road,
yeah. Jean says, I enjoyed the proper introduction of a new Doctor. Like Clara, I was not immediately convinced, but I never am. I hate losing a Doctor, but warmed up to the point that he is my favourite version of the character. Both Jenna and Peter brought me my favourite era of Doctor Who, and I'm grateful. The Campiness Patrol... The plot is very slight, but Peter and Coleman are on fire from the start, a really great dynamic. I don't mind if there isn't much to the story because the exploration of the characters is so good. Has loved the Victorian setting. When it goes dark and gothic, it finds its strength visually and plot-wise. The slapstick humour with Strax is off-putting, and having the focus on the Paternoster gang for a new Doctor's debut is odd. Feels mismatched tonally and aimless at times. Somebody just shared a screenshot of Strax primed to throw the newspaper and said, delivered one of Doctor Who's best comedic moments of all time.
I mean, I do love that moment. Getting smacked in the head with that newspaper is brilliant.
Is it the getting smacked in the head or the actual joke that you like?
Both.
Dino, best introduction to a Doctor with a previous companion. That's an interesting idea. The kind of... Because I guess you never really have the idea of, we're going to spend this episode with this person getting used to them being there. Because Rose from the off in the Christmas Invasion is just like, him, he's all right. There aren't many other instances where it takes a full
is a big
episode. Look at the ears. I haven't got anything to hold on to anymore, but anyway, Dino says, best introduction to a Doctor with a previous companion gets better with every rewatch. 12th the whole time has the best rewatch power, as his story is so well tied with all of New Who that easily is missed during first rewatch. Anything else? Simon, I really like this one. I don't go on a bunch. I don't go a bunch on the Paternoster gang, but P and J are brilliant, as is Half-Face Man and his crew. A notch down on the 11th hour, but has some wonderful moments. Last one here from Tyler. It's a slow, overstuffed story that doesn't start until it's over halfway. And the scenes of Vastra giving condescending speeches to Clara is tiresome. The 11th Doctor's cameo undermines 12. Strax is fun. Worst first story for a Doctor since Time in the Rani.
Wow. That's... Ooh.
Jeez.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know if I go that far.
I won't go that far, I don't think. I didn't think I'd go that far. I mean, we just said a couple that more shit. Yeah, okay, interesting. But I mean, I think on the whole, we're all on the same level, and I think some of them articulated it far better than we did. I think they should be running racist. But yeah, very good. And there was something that someone who said about, rewatching Peter Capaldi, you always see new things. There was something I'd never noticed before. And again, it's going back to what I said about, like, some of these moments just don't feel like they've been directed, or they've been directed in such a way that they're like trying to miss these moments. When the Doctor holds on to the bottom of the chair and he gets hoisted up into the sky, he gives a little wave to Clara with what he's holding on with one hand, and he does like a little doctory wave. And I never noticed it before. And I thought, that should have been a bit of a moment that, it's all right. I'm going off, but in the moment, I'm, he's a big kid. That's the Doctor for you. And it's like,
I didn't catch that. That's nice.
Yeah, and I was like, that's a little nice moment, and it didn't. You just sort of miss it. But
we have to spend more time with Clara getting an examination. We don't have time to cut to the little wave from the reverse angle, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right. So, thanks very much for watching, ladies and gents. Next time, we are, talking of racists, going to go back to the William Hartnell era, 1964, and we are going to, in memory of the late great, put into Jonathan Ross there, in memory of the late great William Russell, we are going to look at The Edge of Destruction, which takes us back to the kind of the starts of Rod, where, an undervalued episode that we're both big fans of, because I love Edge of Destruction. It's, maybe the best 2-episode story in Doctor Who's history. Or maybe not. That face. Are you constipated or what?
I just can't believe what you're saying. What?
Come on. It's great.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Okay.
Now, I actually watched this not long ago.
Ah.
Yeah. But I will rewatch it again.
Yes. With new eyes.
Take notes. With new eyes. Critical eyes. I'm going to keep knocking this light down. So there we go. Next time, it's Doctor Who and the Spring of Death.
Very good.
See you next time.
See you then.
Bye.